You?
Frequently in my life, I will talk to healthcare organizations, and often I see a big gap between the offerings that they have and the needs that I have just as an individual patient. Often those engagements are cold engagements, leaving me more confused and frustrated in the end, as I'm sure you can probably relate to. Switchboard MD was created in 2021 by Blake Anderson to address this need specifically, to provide solutions that are technically relevant and provide value quickly. Founded again in 2021, Blake and his team are designing solutions and are driven to provide and connect the human need or the human value back into medicine through AI. Blake has multiple solutions in his team in their portfolio, but today Blake is here to talk about his solution that's a tech-enabled agent to bring unity back to the human experience in medicine. Thanks.
Thank you very much. So, our title might seem a little bit ironic at first. People think about generative AI in healthcare, especially in kind of any patient-facing capacity, as trying to avoid that human connection. But we think that there are a lot of significant incremental benefits that can be had using the same technologies to improve efficiencies by automating some of the mindless tasks, such as data extraction and data entry. So even when we're not fully replacing the human in the loop, we can have huge benefits, and because of those benefits, we can actually restore the human connection in medicine rather than try and avoid it. And particularly with call center solutions, these improvements related to generative AI can really help those agents to focus on those human-only solvable problems rather than trying to avoid them. So, why do contact centers still matter? So, what I'll say is people, don't necessarily realize that patient communication is a very complex field. It comes in a lot of different modalities. You have online portals, you have SMS text, emails, traditional phone calls, Press Ganey scores, Yelp reviews, and many of the people who interact with healthcare systems the most, particularly older people or people who have complex medical problems, actually prefer interacting with the traditional phone systems rather than using some of the other mediums. And because of that, the contact center representative ends up being the primary touch point for scheduling, clinical questions, refill requests, billing issues, you name it. So being able to efficiently and accurately answer all those questions that come in is crucial to maintain good clinical outcomes, patient satisfaction, as well as operational efficiency. And the other thing I'll say about, particularly with scheduling, is there's still a fair amount of hesitancy from many practicing clinicians to fully embrace online self-scheduling tools for various reasons. And so we believe that contact centers are likely going to be very relevant for the foreseeable future. So, what are the problems with current contact centers? And start with wait times. I'm sure that many people here have experienced this either in healthcare organizations or in other types of businesses. Most healthcare facilities, they do in fact have imperfect contact centers. And you can wait on hold for 20 minutes, you give information to one person before getting transferred around to another person, and then you have to give that same information again, and you may not even get your question solved at that point. And so having to wait on hold for a long time and then never get your question answered is not a good place to start for both satisfaction and, there's other things that can come up related to, patient leakage. If somebody just doesn't want to wait on hold, they may just go to the practice down the street, or they may have clinical situations that they're just going to ignore and not even worry about it. So what's driving those hold times? A lot of times it's related to staffing shortages, high turnover of staff, and staff burnout. And if you think about it, it's a very complex process for this staff to be able to handle any type of question that comes in over the phone. And a lot of times there's complex medical problems that these patients have, And if you're constantly having to retrain staff to do this, and that staff sometimes does not have extensive clinical training in the past, it's an uphill battle for sure. And furthermore, there's still a reliance on outdated IVR systems, number-based, and a lot of times those systems were designed by people who don't necessarily understand healthcare operations. And so the patient may not know which department is right. They may not know which number is the correct choice. Is this a scheduling problem? Is it a clinical question? Is it a billing issue? Is it all three? Most patients aren't trained in medicine, and so they may not know the right answer off the bat. And so trying to push them into predefined choices is kind of a recipe for disaster there. And so when you have to try and navigate these complex number systems, you often result in misdirection, unnecessary transfers, patient frustration and confusion, and possibly clinical delays. To make matters worse, that same staff that has the high turnover, they have to either memorize complex decision trees or keep open complicated spreadsheets that are non-version controlled so they can know, what step to take for every possible scenario. And you end up with patients getting the wrong provider or bounced around in the contact center unnecessarily because of these complex rule systems. You may end up with a mismatch where a patient who needed to see a spine surgeon ended up seeing a hand surgeon instead, or the patient who needs to see the oncologist who specializes in their very rare form of cancer can't see that oncologist for a long time because that oncologist's schedule is booked with a bunch of mismatched patients. Now this next bit, this is actually a recent addition, and on a personal note, this actually happened to my wife today. So she has a cardiac arrhythmia, and she had a syncopal episode in the grocery store yesterday. That means she fainted, and she called her electrophysiologist, who ordered a cardiac MRI, which is a fairly specific test. And she called in the healthcare system and ended up getting bounced around to 6 different people before she could get the test scheduled. And she noted that every single one of them seemed very frustrated and rushed and confused about the scenario. Probably because they didn't really understand this specific test and which decision tree to go down for that scenario. And then the final piece is the current state, the contact center staff, they have to have multiple windows open to solve all the issues. So you have the electronic medical record, payer portals, billing systems, all these things, and typically none of those systems talk to each other very well. Part of the reason for that is that matching medical records is a very complex process that you have to take a lot of care to do so you don't have unnecessary medical errors. Very important to get that right. So how are we solving this at Switchboard MD? So in the current state, kind of what my wife went through and what other people have gone through, call in, navigate the phone tree, wait on hold for some amount of time, hopefully not too long, and connect with a representative. Representative gets your identifiers and searches the medical record to find who you are, and then goes through probably a series of standardized questions to try and figure out how to solve this problem. This is all happening real time, and you end up with a lot of errors, like I referred to earlier. So what we're doing at Switchboard MD is to try and get all the information to the agent immediately real time before the patient even connects. So that way they can solve the problem as fast as possible, not having to worry about going through all these standardized questions and medical record matching, saving a lot of time. We found that a lot of these standardized questions and medical record matching, with the new voice transcription services, it can be done very effectively in an automated fashion. And then all that can be done before you even get connected to the representative. And so this is kind of one of the first points about how this is actually going to improve the human connection to medicine, because we can take care of all those kind of mindless administrative tasks like searching the medical record and asking and answering standardized questions. The agent can focus on the patient who's on the other line and solve the questions, solve the problems that only a human can solve. The other point is that when we're getting all these questions answered ahead of time, we can use some of the more advanced AI models to interpret those questions and answers and provide recommended actions to the staff so that they can identify what the next best steps are and also have the context from the medical record. So this is a mock-up of the front-end app that we've created to do this. So by the time the patient connects to them, the call center representative has a clean display of all the information they need to solve the problem. Information from the medical record, like recent visits, procedures, prescriptions, orders, answers to the questions that used to only live in that spreadsheet. Sentiment analysis so that you can identify if the patient is angry before you start talking to them. Automated clinical triage, like urgency, as well as AI-generated recommended actions for that agent based on that patient input. And the advantage is all this can be done real time and not in a separate window, right within the same app. And so, the other thing I'll point out, going back to the concept of, the staff has high turnover, there's a lot of training burden. By being able to provide all this information immediately, as well as providing recommended actions based on the organization's standard protocols, you can really reduce the barrier related to training needs.
Healthcare contact centers face mounting challenges: staff shortages, complex decision trees, and multiple system requirements for even the most basic patient requests. This leads to long wait times, missed appointment opportunities, and agent burnout. It's time for a change. Switchboard MD's contact center gives your team intelligent tools to streamline communication for better patient outcomes and faster resolutions. Before the contact center specialist even picks up the phone, the physician-designed AI automation will transcribe and match patient EMR records, summarize the call reason, perform call classification and sentiment analysis, incorporate physician-specific decision trees to capture additional information, route the call to the appropriate team member in real time, and automatically generate recommended actions for the contact center specialist to take, all gathered in one convenient dashboard. Give your patients and contact center team the simplified call experience they deserve with Switchboard MD.
All right, so one of our first clients to implement this solution with us is an orthopedic multi-center group in California. And the ask was for several things. They wanted to have an intelligent IVR for scheduling and capture the reason for the call and get it to the right agent immediately. We also wanted to have live transcription summarization, real-time medical record matching, and analysis of the conversation and getting it to the right person immediately. And interestingly enough, in their current state, the decision trees were living in a Excel document that had 17 tabs in it, and so the staff was having to navigate those 17 tabs to make sure that they were scheduling with the right patient, the right surgeon. So, brief architecture walkthrough. If we were playing AWS Service Bingo, I think we probably would win. Got a little bit of everything in here. The primary thing is Amazon Connect. That handles all the telephony and the flows to manage the routing and everything. And we are using Lambda to generate dynamic questions to the patient. The audio is streamed via Kinesis and then transcribed with Amazon Transcribe. The text is then stored in DynamoDB, and we have real-time medical record matching with the client's medical record, and we store that in HealthLake. We're also using Bedrock and SageMaker to get insights for the contact center representative, both the summarization and the recommended actions. One thing I'll point out is that it's very convenient to have Bedrock be HIPAA compliant and not transmitting data to additional services, because privacy of data is incredibly important to all healthcare organizations. And so we have this very nice quote from the executive who was the sponsor of this project. In a time where employment and healthcare costs are on the rise, Switchboard MD plays a crucial role in helping us reduce expenses. So what's next for us? We are going to continue to work on finding how much automation is feasible and what activities can ultimately be freed from the human contact center representative. I do think there's a balance to be had here, and I think that there likely are some activities that can be fully automated, low-level administrative tasks. And we've actually already been using some Bedrock agents using Claude Sonnet 3.5 to do that, and have had some very good results there. We're also working on proactive outbound communication with reminders and risk identification to prevent wasted visits and negative clinical outcomes. And finally, we are also planning on bringing in more information from the medical record, bringing in notes and a scheduling tool, and using those to help generate even more insights for the contact center representative so that they have a full context of what the patient has actually been going through before they connect. And that's all I have. Special thank you to Jonathan here. He's been a great partner for us, and a tech team who's in the audience for me. So thank you very much.